Welcome back, everyone, to the next session. We have a live masterclass right now. It's very, very engaging and it's going to be very interesting. It's called Understanding How to Create an Engaging Virtual Learning Experience by Professor Rohan Shekhar from Minerva Schools. So Professor Shekhar earned his PhD in Control Systems Engineering from the University of Cambridge, as well as a Bachelor of Engineering with first-class honors from the University of Queensland. He has experience in both small group techniques within the Cambridge supervision system and conventional lecturing at the University of Melbourne. As such, he fully endorses the bold path being forged by Minerva in enabling students to take ownership over the education through the use of state-of-the-art teaching technologies based on the science of learning. Welcome, Professor Rohan, to this session. And we have a wonderful set of fellows here. Welcome all of you to this session. Over to you for the next 45 minutes.
Great, thank you very much for that introduction. And hello, everyone. So I'm Professor Rohan Shekhar. I'm an associate professor at the Minerva Schools at KGI in the Department of Computational Sciences. And so really grateful to TFI for giving the opportunity to share some of our experience in creating engaging learning environments in a virtual setting. Joining us today is Jess Varghese, who is our Manager for Outreach in the South Asia region, and she's going to be assisting with the session. So first and foremost, I'll start the slide presentation, and then if you can all just indicate to me that you can see the slides with a thumbs up, that would be fantastic. So I'll just share my screen. And can you just show a thumbs up if you can see the screen? I'm going to start the slideshow as well, so hopefully you can see that too. Okay, excellent. So it looks like you can all see. Okay, so one thing at Minerva, and you've probably already heard a little bit about our background, we emphasize active learning and active participation. So in order to talk about or to facilitate a session on creating an engaging learning experience, we're going to require all of your active engagement in the session. And so that means that you may be called upon to contribute. And if you want to contribute, you want to add to the discussion, feel free to use your hand raise. So you can see that in the if you look at the participants list, you should see an option there for raising your hand. And also when you're contributing, we may have to cut you off just given the time constraint we have. So don't feel offended if I have to stop you in the middle and then go to someone else, because we want to make sure everyone gets the opportunity to participate. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So we're going to kind of divide the session up into 4 parts. And so parts 1 to 3 are going to be the interactive part of this discussion. And are going to require your full engagement. And then we're going to debrief in the 4th part. And we're going to talk about some of the techniques we used in the session, which you may employ in your own classrooms. So we're going to kick this off with a poll. And so if I can get Jess to launch the poll, then we want you to answer some questions based on a reading you had for the session. So we want you to tell us, in your opinion, what do you think is important for creating an engaging learning experience out of these options we've listed here? And we'll give you maybe a couple of minutes to answer this poll. So okay, it looks like everyone has answered. Can you just indicate if you haven't answered with a thumb up so that I can see if you haven't answered the poll? I think everyone's done. So let's share these results. Can you all see the poll results now? Okay, so a lot of you answered all of the above, and that's the correct answer. Let's see if you can tell us why any of these are important based on the readings. Why don't we go to, I'm just seeing if I can see your names, which I can't at the moment. Let me see if there's a way for me to see everyone's names. Why don't we start with Vaibhav? Do you want to tell us?
Yeah, so thank you. So I selected all of the above just because scaffolded learning is important, as students should always start with the easy thing, and then they should try to go above what they are learning while increasing the rigor. And sorry, I don't have all of the options here, but interdisciplinary courseworks are also important, because they can always, we can relate learnings from interdisciplines with each other, and they can always build on it. And yeah, I can add this things only.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's a good answer. So yeah, all the reasons you mentioned are absolutely valid reasons. I do want to get one more contribution, but Jess, I'm not able to see anyone's name. I'm not sure if you can see the names of all the participants in the video, because I can't. You can? Okay. Maybe it's because I'm sharing my screen. So maybe Jess can call on someone to provide another answer to us, because I can't see the names.
Gayatri, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. I was just about to raise my hand as well. Thank you. So I think I have two solid reasons for saying all of the above. And I remember very clearly something that we read was learners learn best when the new information coming their way fits into what they already know. So prior knowledge is activated, which is why scaffolded coursework. And grading that provides quick feedback, because as soon as a learner knows exactly what they need to do going ahead or where the gap is, I think like that just allows for quicker turnaround. Also, I remember something about just representing what they've learned. So synthesis basically as well. And I feel like that fits into one of these, but I'm not sure which one. So I do remember it.
Excellent. Yep, another fantastic answer. So you'll find we're going to try and cover as many of these as we can in today's session. We do have limited time, but we'll see if we can touch on them. So yeah, good answers. It shows that you've already been thinking about these questions in your own classrooms. What we'll do now is we'll move on to the next activity. So this is going to be a breakout activity. But before we do that, we want you to, as you're listening to both of the activities in the session today, number 2 and 3 coming up, listen out for any 2 ideas you think you could adopt in your own classroom. So keep that in the back of your mind as you're listening to the discussions, and we'll ask you to share that with us at the end of the session. So listen out for any 2 ideas that were discussed today that you might want to use in your own classroom settings. Okay, so let's go to our next slide. I'm just going to end the poll here. So yeah, as I said, keep note of the 2 suggestions. Okay, now we've got a breakout activity, and this breakout activity is going to require you to answer some questions about the engagement in the classroom and how we can promote it, and strategies for assessment. There are a couple of other points there as well. What we're going to do is get you to go into breakout groups. There will be 2 breakout groups. Some of you will stay with me here in the main room. And in your group, once you get into the group, you should nominate a scribe to take down notes from the discussion in the group. And the points for discussion are these 3 points here. So those of you in the main room, we're going to be discussing what we can use to maintain engagement. Those of you going to breakout group 1, you want to talk about how you measure learning, because this is quite a challenging thing, especially in a virtual environment. How do you know your students are actually getting what you're teaching them? And then we've got another breakout group, which is going to talk about how you structure a plan for a lesson. So how do you plan out what you're going to teach? Don't restrict yourself to the online environment. Because of COVID, most of us have now had to move online. So feel free to talk about online, but don't restrict yourself to that. You can also talk about a classroom setting as well. Okay, I'll get Jess to start the breakouts, and then we'll have approximately 8 minutes in breakouts, and then we'll come back and share some of our findings. All right, let's go into breakouts. Okay, I think everyone's gone into their group now. Okay. So those of you who are left, we're in group 1. And so we're going to talk about what do we use to maintain engagement. So like I said, I can't see your names, and I'm really not sure why. I can see your names when you speak, though. So why don't we get? Let me see if I can get a list of participants. Maybe we'll stop sharing.
When you click on view, you can get a gallery view.
Okay, I've stopped sharing the participants, so now we can see everyone. Stop sharing the screen. All right, why don't we go to Samriddhi to start us off with? So tell us about maintaining engagement. What are some strategies we could use?
Thank you, Professor. So what I feel like one of the criteria, one of the strategy that you can use to maintain engagement is constant acknowledgement of the responses that the kids give. Like they should really feel that whenever they're responding, whenever they're giving responses, irrespective whether the answer is correct or not, they should feel like we can give answers in the class, and that will enhance and that will improve engagement only if the teacher acknowledges every response. So it all depends on the hand of the teacher, how a teacher would react to that response. So the response could be incorrect, response could be correct, but how you're dealing in that situation, and if you're appreciating the responses consistently, not just in the opening or not just in the closing, but throughout the lesson, I feel like that could be one of the key tools. Others can add more.
Yeah, perfect. Maybe we'll get Vivek, if you don't mind writing these down, then we'll get you to share to the whole group when everybody comes back. So we had one excellent suggestion, which is about acknowledging every response, so every interaction from the student, and that's a great one. Saurabh, you want to tell us a little bit more? Carry on from that point.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. So, am I audible? Okay, yeah, so I just wanted to add quickly, I just wanted to also bring in the point of, trying to just probably break the ice within the conversations that we have with students, right? Because taking classrooms regularly, also having a lot of interaction with them on a regular basis, what we don't generally tend to see is that, students have a lot of inhibition when they have to speak in front of, a virtual camera, for say. So probably I think just breaking the ice, bringing in a lot of acknowledgement, as somebody had mentioned. At the same time, also having a regular feedback system where we have assessments, right? We also bring in a lot of assessments, activities, and also, for instance, like just the way that we are doing, right? Maybe integrate using more breakout rooms, I would say, because wherein we can also focus on smaller groups, because I believe just handling a larger group, trying to get in a lot of information from the collective basis tends to be a little bit tedious. So probably working on smaller groups and getting a little more insight from students, maybe also involving in buddy activities is something that I've probably noticed works well. So that's my point.
Yeah, excellent point. Small groups, and that's one of the reasons why we're running a breakout here. So small groups work well. Why don't we go to Vivek? So tell us a little bit about how the small groups really help to enhance engagement. Why do you think students are more engaged when they're in a small group?
All right, so there can be two perspectives of that it's a smaller group. People tends to speak as much as they do not speak on a larger platform, because they feel like it's a safe space where 4 to 5 people are there and they can share their feelings or experiences, whereas there's the larger platform, the people with more confidence tend to speak much. So adding to what Saurabh and Samriddhi also said, that I would like to add that for that also we need to engage them as much as we can through different mediums, not only like asking them questions, but like involving them in a lot of activities, like some games or some fun things where they can share their experiences. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes. So you made a very good point about dual coding, which is where we use multiple media to engage the students, right? So this is important, not just in groups, but also when you're together as a class. And why do you think that might be? We'll go back to Samriddhi. Why do you think it might be that if you have multiple media, students are more engaged than just, say, a teacher talking and maybe just writing something on a board?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So what I feel is, like, if you are going to limit the entire discussion on the basis of just teacher talking, you wouldn't actually get the learning outcome from the students. So you really need to get the students discuss their own perspectives. And the surprising thing and the most fascinating thing is that their answers can vary, can vary so much, and that has so much quality. So I think discussion, debating, respecting each other's opinion, I think that creates collaboration, that creates a sense of learning, together, like learning it together. And that is only possible if they are discussing and they're having a space to discuss among themselves and not just the teacher talking. Because the students would definitely get bored and they wouldn't realize that what potential they have within themselves unless or until they're not given a chance to. So just giving them that space where they can contribute to a discussion, just like what we are doing right now. So I feel like it's extremely of paramount importance that kids get to discuss. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
It does. And it goes back to your point about making each student feel valued and making their contribution feel valued, right? Which is obviously much easier in a small group setting than it is in large groups. So, to make sure each student gets a chance to shine, it's often very useful to have them broken into smaller groups where they have that opportunity. And then as a class, it's not maybe so important if some students, because of time, don't get the chance to contribute because they've had the opportunity in the small group to be heard. Now, one of the important things is also not just to let students off on their own to discuss, but also to have a teacher or a professor actually moving around the groups. Why do we think that helps with the discussion? Why don't we go to Vivek again? Vivek, why do you think it helps if you have like a teacher kind of just circulating around the groups, shall we say, while the students are working?
Yeah, so it helps the children to be on track. So they did not get deviated from the topic they are discussing on, or they are not like be silent throughout the period of time. We are not looking into them. So that's why circulating around the groups and looking what they are doing and bringing them back on track is essential part of the discussions or the small groups which we have. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent point. So we need, having groups doesn't mean that the teacher can sit back and let the groups just work on their own. In fact, more involvement is required, right? It means that you have to be actively going to each group and seeing what it is that they're doing. Are they getting the point? If they're off track, you need to very quickly push them back onto the right track of the discussion, right? And also to make sure quieter students are being heard, because in a group, it is possible for some students to completely dominate the discussion. So you do need to be actively checking and making sure those quieter students are actually contributing. So I think we're getting to the end of our breakouts. Okay, great. So what is our main takeaway, do you think, from the discussion we just had here? Vivek's going to be the scribe, but I'll get Saurabh to debrief us. What do you think were some of the points?
Sure. Thank you so much, Rohan. So I think just, probably summarize, I would say, in the end, just fostering a community, right? Because at the end of the day, we are probably interacting with students in a virtual environment on a regular basis as of now, trying to integrate blended learning. So fostering a community, trying to understand, what their problems are, delving deeper into, the challenges that we face as well as the students face. So probably understanding, on a deeper level, trying to make, I would say, virtual learning a little more interactive, because I think that's a very, very big challenge. And at the same time, I think, also to add to the point, I would say using a lot of inflections, right? That's something that also the educator or the teacher needs to do. Having dramatic pauses, trying to say what he wants to implement at single intervals is going to be a very big challenge. So if that is, working on a regular basis, then probably it might, enhance the situation.
Yep, excellent. Okay, looks like everyone is making their way back. Are we missing anyone, or has everyone managed to find their way back in the breakout room? Looks like everyone is here. Okay, so let's get some sharing from the different groups. I think Vivek was nominated as the scribe for group 1, and we were looking at this question of engagement. So Vivek, do you want to tell us about what the main findings were from our discussion?
Yeah, so as we discussed in our group, and we came up a lot of similar points we were talking about, to take a lot of response from the children, hearing them and letting the student to give feedbacks and involving them such activity where each and every child can participate. Talking about the breakout move discussions also, we came up with the point that where we have to take a look on the children, what they are doing, because we have to ensure that all the children are participating and they are on track and listening to what other people are sharing. It gives also space to show their perspective, because in a larger platform where all the 30 to 40 children are present, they're not able to like showcase what they are like having inside their mind. So breakouts from discussion are very important as a part to maintain engagement of the children. Apart from that, multiple media, we came up with the idea that multiple media platforms are needed to be used to have maximum participation of the children. Yeah.
Excellent points, Vivek. So the engagement topic is something that's going to run constantly through the rest of the session. So we're going to come back to this. Why don't we go to Breakout Group 1? Who was the scribe for Breakout Group 1? If you can share. This was the question of measuring the learning of the students.
That was me. So Aman, Ananya, and I, and for a little bit Jess also, we discussed how to measure, like what is the best way in this current context also to measure learning. We deep dived a little bit into measuring learning during a learning experience. And so checking for understanding throughout a learning experience is what we mostly spoke about. And I think the key things that came up were, like, some were just tools that are helping us right now, like Google Classroom or like yes, no, CFUs in checks for understanding during the session, etc. Or scaffolding even the questions that we ask. Some other bigger buckets that came up were just, as a teacher, are we being really strategic about all the data that we collect and the measuring of learning that we do? Because there is so much to constantly observe and take in. And some of it we might not even need. So are we being strategic about exactly what we are gathering and using to inform our instruction? And how do we make sure our students know the purpose of why we're measuring, why we're asking them questions, why we're checking their understanding, so that they don't influence each other's answers, so that they're also okay with making mistakes. That's just where we paused.
Yeah, excellent points, all of them. Especially, you made a point of using technology. This is going to be the next topic we're going to look at very briefly. That's what we're going to show, is that technology is really something that can make a huge difference to your ability to assess how well students are learning, and also to get them engaged. It has kind of this dual benefit. Let's wrap this up with the second breakout group, which was the topic of structuring lesson plans. So who wants to share on that?
Yeah, I'll take that. So Mitali and I were essentially sharing the context of a classroom, and it's very similar. So we agreed on pretty much some like very core points. Whenever we were thinking of designing a lesson plan in the physical space, we try to incorporate a lot of things which obviously get limited in a virtual space. But some of the things that have worked for both of us in our classrooms have been incorporating art in our lesson plans. I think just in terms of building engagement and ensuring that the kids are interacting with us as we go along, and it's not very information heavy. We try and incorporate art and bring some elements of creativity into the picture. Also, another huge part of it is creating spaces for them to interact with each other and also build that sort of healthy competitiveness amongst them by giving them challenges and some sparks to think about. So just pausing in between our lesson plans to ensure that the kids are processing and synthesizing everything that's going their way, and they're also getting the time to verbally interact with one another to just make that learning more concrete. And I think just like to wrap it up, in the present status with the virtual setup with virtual learning going on, I think we've both realized that most of the learning takes place in these kind of synchronous spaces where as much as communication is possible. In an asynchronous space, especially with first generation learners, it's very difficult to achieve that kind of engagement and that kind of like check on whether the learning is happening, because there are very few monitoring mechanisms in place. So these are the few things that came out in the conversation in Breakout Room 2.
Yeah, all of them excellent points. And I like how you brought together the fact that the structure of the lesson goes hand in hand with engagement and goes hand in hand with the student outcomes. So that's how you assess the learning. So all these three are related together. You can't really separate them. And that's a very good takeaway from the discussion we've just had. Okay, I'm going to share my screen once again, and we're going to just briefly look at this aspect of technology. Because of COVID now, many of us are having to transition to online teaching. So this is something we've actually been doing at Minerva for quite a while. We're completely online. All of our teaching happens online, so we're used to this, but many of you would not have had the experience before. So we want to touch on, I'll just go to the second slide here. So we're just going to get a few points. We've only got a couple of minutes. So we want to know about technological tools what technological tools have you used so far in your online teaching? Can I get you to just put in chat what some of those tools are that you've used? Okay, so we're seeing quite a few of the popular tools here. The Google Suite, of course, very popular, not because it's free, and it has a lot of very effective tools. I see someone's mentioned Jamboard as well, which is another fantastic innovation. To be able to have a whiteboard on a virtual class is great. Okay, so we've got a very good selection of tools here. Zoom, of course, Microsoft Whiteboard. What I want to do now is to maybe just go through a couple of contributions from you on what challenges you've had using technology in the classroom. What has it changed, or what has it made more difficult compared to being in the actual classroom setting? Why don't we get Ananya to share with us?
Thank you so much for calling on me. I can talk about this. I can talk about this particular question for a while. One of them is definitely something I shared in my breakout room as well, is that I'm having difficulty gauging understanding. And it's easier when I have responsive students who are comfortable using the platforms, but I also have a lot of students who are not as comfortable using the platforms. I use Google Meet mostly and Google Classroom. So I have some students who are still struggling to use these. And so their response is a little less, and I'm not always able to gauge like their level of understanding. Even with CFUs, I struggle to see like how much of it has really been understood. Another thing that definitely is just like the quality of network. Even if I want to send a Loom video across, even if I want to share my screen, a lot of times like it just doesn't load for them, and it just doesn't work for them. A lot of students have had their access restricted to their phones. So when I send a YouTube video across, they're like, I can't watch it because my network is just not, it doesn't load. So even if I want to share screen, then I can't do that. So like right now, I have two alternatives for every single asynchronous option I have. Like I have to have a YouTube video, but I also have to have like a pictures that I can send across. So yeah, these are just some of the problems that I've been facing.
Okay, very, very good points. And the onboarding process can be very difficult, especially getting students up to speed with using the technology, and not to mention the technical issues that happen with the platforms. You've covered a number of the problems that we can face. I also want to get a contribution if we can. So I'm just seeing who else has put in chat. Mitali, do you want to tell us about your issues with?
Sure. I have two major challenges with using technology. One is the availability of device, daily data limits, and they don't have their devices for a long duration of time. So they don't get to explore a lot of tools and using multiple devices. The second major is the login based tools that they have. They find it really complicated. First, they didn't have email IDs. They are sixth grade kids. They didn't have email IDs and all. Though we tried to get them on board with email IDs and getting them logged in, but they find it really complicated to comprehend all of those things and then using that technology. So these are the major two challenges that I have with using tools, and that is very limited. Any tool which uses a lot of data is just out of my scope. I can't use it. So yeah, majorly those. Thank you.
Great. And I mean, these are important challenges, particular to the Indian context as well, right? Where we have students who may have very poor internet access, and it really affects their ability to participate in any online activities. And so this is something that it has no easy answers to this in the short term, but it's certainly something that needs to be considered when we're looking at developing infrastructure to allow online learning. I want to touch on one last point here, which is what we think about the use of technology to promote learning. Sure, it has difficulties, but it also has a lot of benefits that actually make it, in fact, better for learning than a real classroom environment. Let's get an opinion on this. I don't know if Bala is just listening or if she wants to contribute. Bala, can you hear us? Okay, maybe she's just listening.
She's running the track, so I think we'll just have to call someone else.
Okay, fine. Why don't we go to, let me see, who hasn't had a talk for, Sauram. Tell us about how technology helps with learning.
Sure. Thank you so much, Rohan. So I think, yeah, as we had already mentioned, the challenges that we face, right? We're also trying to use many different type of technological tools to probably, improve the efficacy of and the depth of understanding of the concepts. That's precisely what I've been trying to do, integrate into my curriculum. I've also tried to use different kinds of apps, which students might not be able to, let's say, even if there's a problem wherein they're not able to, access data, or if there is an issue with regard to just trying to, open packets. There are also alternatives wherein, they could probably collaborate with a few of the other students in the classroom and then go ahead and learn. So I think it's not only about the challenges that we are seeing, it also helps a lot with trying to bring in the collaboration among students, if there are inadvertent situations. So I feel that that's something that we need to focus on here to probably, improve the fact that, when you already have a virtual environment, there are scenarios wherein, the tools can probably help them to improve on the depth of understanding as well. So that's what I would like to say.
Yeah, excellent point. This is, again, something we'll discuss in the debrief, is how technology can be a real positive force, provided we can overcome some of these obstacles that we've mentioned. So we've looked a little bit at engagement. We've looked at, structuring the lessons, getting active participation, and we've also looked at technology and how these kind of go together. Let's kind of round this out with a reflection on what we've discussed in this short session. And so we asked you at the start to think about 2 things that you might take away from the discussion we've had and implement in your own classroom. So if I can get you to tell us here about those 2 takeaways, and just put your takeaways in chat, and then we'll get 1 or 2 of you to share with us. And these points are going to be different for all of you because you're all teaching in slightly different contexts. So we want to get your kind of wealth of different perspectives to see what you think you could use in your particular classroom situation. Okay, we maybe have another minute or so. So if you can, just a quick summary of 2 things you might take away. Okay, has everyone got their answers in? Is anyone still going? Okay, looks like everyone has got their answers, which is great. Why don't we go to Gayatri? Can you share the couple of takeaways you had from the session?
Definitely, I'd love to. I think what I've written here is just how something that got reiterated for me during this session was how engagement, measuring learning, and the design of that learning experience cannot be looked at in isolation, right? So I can't say I'll design my content, then I will design how I want to measure my outcomes, and then I will design what's the fun element or what will make this really engaging. It's all integrated. That's the one thing that got just reiterated. And the second thing is technology can be a really good thing. I think I personally need to stop looking at it also as the enemy right now, because like if we use it well, it can take us to really good places. So yeah.
Excellent takeaways. And all of you have had some good takeaways. So we are out of time for this part of the interactive part of the session. So thank you all for your contributions and great active participation. Now when we go to the debrief, we want you to think about how we ran this session today, because a lot of the techniques that we use for engagement are what we just used now in running this session. So a bit of metacognition about the process of running this short session that we had today. Let's have a look at some of the points. Now, this is a really important one, and a lot of you touched upon this when you were saying about making sure that students feel that they're in a safe environment to be able to contribute to class, right? So this is really important. There needs to be a very strong culture of acceptance that any response is okay, engagement is encouraged, right? There are no stupid answers to any questions. Students shouldn't feel that if I say the wrong answer, then it's going to look bad, or I'm going to suffer some penalty in terms of my assessment for the course. They should feel free to express themselves, and the only way they learn is by expressing the difficulties they have. And so that culture is very important. So when you're setting up your learning community, whether it be online or in person, you need to make sure that you do emphasize you are all a team and there's no competition. You're working together to learn, and your learning outcomes together as a group can be much greater than if you're all kind of working for your own learning, right, individually and seeing it as a competition, which it's not. And one of the important things here is calling on students using their names. So you notice that I called upon all of you to make a contribution today, some of you more than once where there was time. And this is really important because it makes the student feel valued. And I think in our breakout group 1, this was mentioned about making the student as an individual feel valued, that their contribution really matters. And so it's important for teachers to similarly make sure that they know all of the students' names, and they know to call on the student by name, and the student feels recognized by the teacher. That's critical. And this is easier in an online learning environment where you can see everyone's names, although I couldn't see all of your names today until I managed to get it in chat. But this is something that helps greatly in making sure students feel valued, students feel like they're part of the class and they're not being ignored or overlooked. Assigning roles is also very important. So to have active learning, you really need the students to be doing something. And this means that you want to assign students to, for example, take notes. You want to assign students to maybe monitor responses, or you can tell a student, I want you to respond to the next point that's going to be made by this other student. So you're getting them listening and saying, I need you to listen out for this, get ready to be involved. And so you saw we did that today with the breakouts. We had a scribe, we had somebody responsible for taking notes and then sharing the findings. And that can really help to create this sense of community, giving students roles, and obviously making sure all students have the opportunity to undertake those roles at various points throughout the academic calendar, right? So that's very important. The final point we have here is using activities to ask students to apply concepts in a collaborative sense. So small group work was our example here in today's session of getting you to be able to talk in a setting which is much easier to have conversations than a huge classroom, right? When you're in a group with 2 or 3 people, it's much easier to have a depth of conversation, a depth of engagement that you can't in the large classroom. So having students work in groups is really an important aspect of active learning. Debates, so that means that call on a student to contribute and then get another student to respond to that. And then maybe you get a third student to respond to those 2. And that way you're encouraging discussion amongst the class rather than just making it all about me as a teacher, right? I know everything and I'm just going to somehow transfer all my knowledge to you. It works much better when the students are actively engaging with the material. Okay, so let's go to this second slide as well. Which is about focus of the students. Making sure the students have a task is very important, because it's very easy to sit back and just not listen. And so you would have noticed one thing we asked you to listen out for today was 2 things that you would want to take away. And that's called an engagement prompt. So we told you something to listen to that we want you to think about, so you can't tune out during the discussion because you're going to be asked to answer this question at the end. So having something that students who are not contributing listen out for and then contribute is a great way to maintain engagement in the classroom. Varying the activities obviously goes without saying. We had some polls here to be able to assess your grasp of the readings, the small group work, and then we had a large group discussion. So different kinds of activities help maintain student interest. Building in moments of closure. This is really important. So you'd notice at the end of each discussion, I got a couple of you to summarize what the findings were from the discussion. And then I also added any insight where it was applicable. Capping off an activity and giving students some sense that they know this is the main takeaway is absolutely essential. So students do need to know what the takeaway is from each activity you have in class. And you only move on to the next activity once you're sure that they've all had a chance to get that takeaway from the activity. The last point here is giving students time to reflect. So this was another purpose of getting you to talk about what your takeaways were, is to get you to reflect on the whole session and then put that into chat. This is a really important way to keep engagement and help encourage student participation. We've got another point here, which is about using interactive resources. So you could see here that we use slides, which are, have some color schemes in them so that students are kind of engaged with the material. You want to try and use multimedia wherever possible. Videos are great in an online setting if you can use them. Let's also look at this point about collaborative tools. So Google Docs, for example, is great to have students all log into one collaborative document where they can type in their ideas when they're working in breakout groups, for example. Collaborative work online like that is really important. And encouraging comments in chat. Now, this is really important as well, because chat is a forum for students to express their views without necessarily needing to speak in class. So not every student may have the opportunity to actually speak their thoughts out loud, but they can still contribute to the discussion by putting their thoughts in chat. And this is a really great way for a teacher to look at the chat and say, actually, this student has made a really good observation. Let's call on them to answer a question, or let's call on them to explain their viewpoint on this particular topic. So have the chat stream going at the same time as you're having the main class going with discussions or other activities. It really helps to get students engaged. Okay, now the bugbear of technology, and this is something just the two of you that expressed your issues with technology would have, I'm sure all of you have actually experienced the issues. Get everyone accustomed to the tools. So the students need to be properly onboarded. They need to know what the tools are. They need to know how to use them. You don't want to spend half your semester trying to get students up to speed on the tools. The other point is you want to avoid troubleshooting in real time. If there are problems with technology, we want them to take a backseat, right? So I mentioned a little bit about the issue I had seeing your names in chat, but I didn't carry that on. You don't want to carry on about technology. Students lose faith in the technology, then they lose engagement. So try as much as possible to deal with technological issues quickly without bringing too much attention to them, if you can. Obviously encourage students to silence phones, etc., to avoid distractions. That's true in a classroom. Encourage students to keep videos on as well, because if you can see their face and they can see your faces, it feels much more like they're interacting with real people rather than just hearing voices. And last is a practical one. If at all possible, students should use an Ethernet connection so that they have a reliable internet connection where that's possible. So we did hear a couple of issues from a couple of you mentioning bad internet connections can really ruin the experience. So having students making sure they have a good connection is really vital. Okay, I'm going to wrap up here. And thank you all for being such great active participants. I'm going to hand over to Jess just to say a couple of words on those of you who might be interested in knowing more about how we adopt these strategies at Minerva and want to continue the conversation. You can reach out to us. Over to you, Jess.
Thank you, Rohan, and thank you, fellows, for such a great session. So a lot of the techniques we spoke about today in the masterclass are implemented in Minerva's classrooms, and all of this is based on our learnings from the past 5 years using our own proprietary technology platform called the Forum, which puts in place all the learnings we experience today in the masterclass. We also offer various programs for high schoolers, undergraduates and graduates. If you are interested in knowing more about either of the programs and would want to partner or collaborate with us, please reach out to us via the email listed on the slide, or you can also contact us using our contact information on the feedback form of the session, which will be shared by the Teach for India team. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you had a wonderful time.